All right, guys, welcome to the show. This is Four Verticals Podcast episode 106. Again, no pre-show today. We're getting straight to business. Most of that is because, again, I do live in Florida. We get afternoon thunderstorms. This show usually is in the afternoon. There are storms in the area. So, again, in lieu of, if you guys happen to hear thunder and stuff in the background, we're just going to go past the pre-show. We'll probably bring it back. Hopefully next Tuesday, hopefully, but can't say for certain. But hopefully everyone's having a good day. Of course, this show is high top from Jacksonville, Florida, a somewhat steamy Jacksonville, Florida. Actually, currently more overcast at the moment. Again, we do this show twice a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Around this time of the time today, again, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on the podcast feed on Spotify. Follow me on Twitter as well. It should be in the channel description. And again, make sure to do all those things. The show we are independent media. I've never talked to a sponsor. I never talked to a vendor or anything like that. The show is completely independent media. So I'm not getting money for anyone. This is all me. And also, I'll never put this show behind the paywall. So that would never happen. I want you guys to have as much easy access to the show as much as possible, in my opinion. So I want to get it out of the way as the usual boilerplate stuff. As a reminder, we will not have a live show next Thursday, so a week from today. What we will do is that we're going to have several evergreen. Well, not really evergreen because they're going to have record projections for this year. So I guess they're kind of evergreen, but we are going to have pre-recorded shows. I think several pre-recorded shows. I think at least one for Thursday, maybe one for Friday as well. Maybe a little surprise on 4th of July. So just be on the lookout for that. I'll give you guys more updates on that on Twitter. Of course, I'll be traveling next week for the 4th of July holiday here in the U.S. So again, there will not be a live show next Thursday. It'll likely have to be a pre-recorded one. So just putting it out there. Let's dive into this. Got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to discuss, which is sort of no reason why we're going head first into the show, no pre-show. So I've already put the link on Twitter, so hopefully everyone got that. But if you're listening to this on the replay, then it doesn't matter. I guess if you're listening to us on Spotify too. So first little topic here. Of course, we're going to do our spicy predictions, our new little segment we've put sprinkling the show. I think this is going to end up being one of my favorite segments I think we've brought in. I really am enjoying how we've been doing this. So if you're new here, do the explainer here, how this goes down. It's sort of like a bold predictions type thing, but instead of calling it bold predictions, we'll use sort of like the hot wings metaphor, so spiciness. So we have mild, this prediction could happen, warm, maybe, hot, slightly more unlikely, spicy, totally unlikely. We have had a hot, warm, and a mild. Several of those. We had at least one of those already. We haven't had a spicy one. I don't think we have. Let me check our past ones. I don't think we have so far. So mild, hot. Yeah, these are mostly been not spicy yet. So that's interesting. So we have not had a hot not had a spicy prediction. Yeah, like a truly spicy prediction, meaning it's totally unlikely. Don't think it's going to happen. But we're getting close, though. We're getting close. Certainly, most of these are of the warm to hot category, but there's one mild one, which is the first one. Up first, Clemson wins a national title. This is not that unlikely. This could definitely happen. I have this as a mild. Now, you may think this is completely crazy because the sort of stigma around Clemson football, it's falling apart, it's getting stale. Dabo Swinney's not using the portal. He's not embracing NIL enough. He's doing this and that. He's making, stupid internal hires instead of external hires. Well, all that can be true, and I agree with you, right? I have been somewhat critical both on this show and behind the scenes before the show was a thing, that I've been somewhat critical, much like a lot of other folks, of Dabo Swinney's sort of rhetoric, I guess, on the portal and NIL. I think his take on the portal, well, I do agree that high school should be the main way you should be attributing talent, because that's the best. That's where all the best talent, at least you believe, or it's to where the best ability to develop talent is coming from. Now, of course, in the portal, you use that to supplement other positions. And I think what Clemson and the turn of Florida State's doing are two opposing ways of doing things. While they both have their, of course, their benefits, and it's, sort of the goodness that could come from using one of those stances on the portal, there's also the consequences of using the portal or not using it. And I think it's becoming more clear that there is going to be, or at least the more reasonable way to use the portal is having a balance of it, right? You do your main talent nutrition from recruiting, getting guys out of high school, you can develop in-house. And then if you sort of miss on a couple of those guys, some of them pan out, or you just didn't recruit well in one area, you can use the portal to supplement those sort of skill areas or those position groups that you didn't necessarily do well in recruiting. And I think you're seeing that with, like, Auburn, for example, has been trying to do this. Bama kind of was doing this. And then you have the more extreme stuff like with Colorado, Ole Miss, Florida State. So there's definitely it's still, I think at this point, the way the portal is operating, it's still very much, either you're totally for it, totally against it, not so much in the middle, or I guess some to that extent. But so anyway, even with the issues I have with Clemson, the way Dabo has some of the decisions he has made, though, again, I respect him for doing it. It's his program. He's less smarter than I am. He's more wiser than I am. He's been doing this longer than I've been alive for the most part. I will say this, and I do agree with Josh Payne on this as well. This Clemson team could actually be their best team, like their best assembled team they've had probably this decade. Now, with at least within a full season. Now, if you want to go, 2020 as well, yeah, that Clemson is probably the best Clemson team we've had this decade. But if you want to go just in terms of a full season without all the circus and distractions and, playing less games, having a full 12 team or 12 game sample size, this might be the best Clemson team we've had this decade. I mean, the receiver room has been finally addressed. Kate Klemenich, him and Garrett Riley, that sort of, those two sort of coming together, that I think is starting to pay off a little bit. Dabo hiring out of his staff instead of hiring within. He's going out of his inner circle, going to get, Garrett Riley from TCU, getting Tom Allen from Penn State, getting sort of overhauling his coaching staff, which he made mistakes, right? Promoting guys like Brandon Streeter and, all these other assistant coaches that were coming from within, while they may have been, yes men to Dabo, they may have been, part of the program and part of the Clemson family. I think it's starting to become obvious to me and all over people in the industry that it just wasn't good enough, right? Those hires were just not the Clemson standard necessarily, and you saw that happen. So I think the way they have assembled this team and using the portal, they have a reasonably good schedule. Though I will say that that game against Georgia Tech, I think it's week 2 or week 3, very dangerous game. I know Josh Payne has been very much so on the forefront of the Georgia Tech waving with the flag and pom-poms and stuff like that. And so have I. I think Georgia Tech would be a really good team too. And I think that game, I know they played Colorado, I think, the week before. I know a lot of folks probably will watch that game, at least the general public. Now, us sickos, we will watch it. I know, but yeah, I don't think a lot of the general public will be watching that game. But I know a lot of folks will be watching that Clemson game when Clemson comes to town. And unlike the Georgia game where it's being played in freaking Mercedes-Benz Stadium, this will be at the Dodd. This will be at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Like that's like a bad thing, I guess, according, supposedly for some people. But it will be a true home game for Georgia Tech. And that's a place, by the way, where you've seen Clemson sort of be wobbly in. You've seen a lot of good teams go in there. Or at least highly ranked teams go in there and lose. Miami last year, Florida State years ago, back 2015 or 16, I believe. So they've had a history of doing that, and of course, again, this Georgia Tech team could be pretty good. But even outside of it, right? Because we'll eventually do Clemson in the 2025 team projection series. They'll be coming up here, I think, next week actually. I do expect, even with that game, we have the game at South Carolina could be a trap or could be obstacles for them. Health at quarterback is one thing, right? Because I don't know if they have necessarily the best talent behind Kate Klemenich if he goes down. I still believe, even with all that stuff being said, Clemson could be a national title contender. And I'll just say this: if this does happen again, I think this could happen. That's why it's in the mild category, which is the lowest of our categories. And Imagine that. Like, imagine Dabo Swinney getting the last laugh when everyone's saying, "You guys told me I was crazy for doing all the things I've been doing and the rhetoric I've been doing, so the way I've been carrying myself. Hey, it worked out. Hey, we won another national title." Like, that would be such a Dabo Swinney moment to win a national title this year and just to rub it in everyone's faces and shove in the ring and, air all of college football. Like, that would just be such a classic Dabo moment. It's just really fun to watch. To just, like, imagine, like, the whole world would literally, I think, explode if they do that, because I think everyone thinks that Clemson is sort of this, extinct, prehistoric thing now. They've, Clemson. I don't know, man. If they win the national title, I think that'll wake a lot of folks up going, oh, okay. Then that'll be a general surprise for most of the general public. But for us, sickos and the ones who follow this sport, that shouldn't surprise you. Clemson is probably going to be the best team in the ACC next year. Their favorites win the conference. They'll be in the playoff because it's not guaranteed to get those 4 spots because they're changing format this year, which I don't know why, because they're changing it again next year. So they'll be in whether or not they get one of the top 4 seeds. We'll see. But yeah, Clemson win the national title. Yeah, that's not crazy at all. That could definitely happen. This next one, though, I don't know about this one. I almost put this as a spicy, but I didn't. I didn't meet that criteria yet. And that's Utah, University of Utah. It's in the Big 12 now. We're there last year. Will miss a bowl game for the 2nd straight year. This happened last year. For the first time in over 10 years, the Kyle Whittingham team has missed a bowl game. Went 5-7 last year. And I get it. Injuries. You have your coordinator resign or basically got fired. Just a lot of bad stuff happened to Utah last year. I mean, they started out 4-0. I mean, they beat Oklahoma State, which turns out that game was as you went longer into the season, it became less and less relevant. They just went on a massive losing streak. This is insane. They did not win a single game from September 21st to November on Black Friday. Like, just a long stretch. Like, they didn't even win a single game in October. Ugh! Just absolute insanity. Like, I never thought we would see a Kyle Whittingham team this far into the future having a horrible season like this. It was just bad. Now, you can make the argument, well, I mean, most of the games are reasonably close, right? I mean, outside of maybe the game against, Colorado and Arizona to a certain extent, which is true, right? Most of these games were one-possession games. BYU, Arizona State, TCU, Arizona State, Houston. All these are all one-score games and games that were, if you just change, a single turnover or maybe a certain decision-making move. Yeah, they could have easily won most of those games, but they lost most of them. And, they have a whole new staff there. Of course, the big sort of elephant in the room, if you will, is that, Kyle Whittingham may not be the coach there very much longer. There's, he's mentioned there's a succession plan. He's probably, I'd imagine this might be his last year, or who knows. Their schedule this year, though, if you want to, look and see if they could miss a bowl game, they get UCLA, a former friend of the Pac-12, on the road as non-con FCS team. Then they go to Wyoming. I repeat this, do not overlook this game. If you're a Utah fan or anyone on that staff or a player, do not overlook Wyoming, because the team you're playing after that, Texas Tech, they know that. It's what is on cover 3. It's Windy and Laramie. Look, I understand a lot of folks, maybe have no interest in watching that game. I would. It's nationally televised. It's on the road. Laramie, it's a weird place to play at. It's often windy up there. It's higher in elevation. It's a place that they're not really. I guess that's not really a bad thing, because I think Utah is also higher in elevation, but still, it's a tough place to play. It's a tough place to get to. It's literally in Wyoming. May as well be halfway to Japan, but that's a tough place to play at. And look, that's a trap game. Look, just don't overlook that game. We've seen a lot of decently good teams go up there and lose. So that's definitely a losable game. I believe I have to look at the lines for that game. I would imagine Utah's not some massive favorite. I think they should be favored, but I would imagine it'll be 10-point favorite, 11-point favorite. Probably not that large. Or it's not a major gap. Then, of course, to have their Big 12 schedule in it, they get to real in a hurry. Texas Tech, one of the best teams in the conference. West Virginia, sort of in a reboot mode. Arizona State, some of BYU, and their quarterbacks facing legal problems. Colorado, same thing, reboot. Cincinnati, we'll see. Baylor could be a really good team. Kansas State, same. Kansas, we don't know. So, yeah, it can get real in a hurry, but I really don't think that's going to happen. I put this in the warm category. It's a maybe, yes, because the schedule does get sort of real in a hurry. There's a lot of other teams that are probably better than Utah, but it's Kyle Whittingham. Same thing with Mike Gundy. It's like these two coaches both, well, I guess when Whittingham was in the old Pac-12 and Gundy, since he's basically been there in Stillwater, they have always been, these two coaches, to me, sort of the model of consistency in both of their respective, former respective conference and the current one. Like, they just have been, right? Like Utah from 2013 to just now, I mean, in that large gap of time, no losing season, just winning season. I guess besides 2020, if you take out the full year or not having a full year, when they've had a full year, it's, winning seasons, right? Multiple Pac-12 championship appearances, even winning a couple of them. But yeah, I just don't, like, them missing a bowl game for a second straight year. I don't know. I just don't really know if that's going to happen. But then again, I put it in the maybe category. So it's warm. It could happen. It wouldn't really surprise me, but it kind of would. I'm hoping it doesn't. It doesn't become the case. So it's in the warm category. This next one could have been a spicy one. Honestly, I probably should have made this spicy, but then again, there's always the potential of it. You never know. It's Arkansas wins 10-plus games. This is a hot. Again, I almost made it a spicy, but it's a hot. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, is there a path for this where it could happen? Believe it or not, there actually could be a path to this. Now, most of this mainly delves on later in the year. So from like mid-October to November, and if you haven't looked at your schedule yet, I can make the case for it. But it's a very, 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 it sort of crumbles pretty quickly. So they start out the year with FCS team and then Arkansas State from the G5. I believe it's actually the first time they're playing each other, which is insane because they're in the same state. You would imagine, like, geographically, they'll play each other a lot more often, but how about that? So you get your G5 FCS team, just start 2-0. Then it gets real in a hurry and you have to go to Ole Miss, a team that embarrassed you last year. So you're probably going to lose that game, I'd imagine. Then you play your other G5, and it's at Memphis, which happens to be one of the better G5s as well. So that could be another loss. Then your last non-conference game, it's Notre Dame at home at noon, which sucks. It could have been a night game, but unfortunately it's a noon on ABC, SEC on ABC. So at that point, if you look at it, it could be 3-2, or at worst case 2-3. Which would be a totally doomsday scenario if that's the case. If Arkansas were to lose like 3 straight games going into the first bye week. Then it gets real in a hurry again with like Tennessee on the road. Then you have A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, at LSU, at Texas, at Missouri. But here's sort of the flip side of it, where yes, it can get ugly in a hurry, and Sam Pittman's out of a job before October. But if you want to look at it from the glass half full, glass half empty, I think there is a case here. If you can just get through this stretch of, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, you go 3-2. The interesting thing is with Tennessee, new quarterback coming in, a lot of turnover. We'll see A&M. It's at home finally, no longer at freaking Jerry World. So, thank you. It's finally on campus again. In a normal year, I know in 2020 it was on campus. So that game's at home for you. That's a big bonus. Not a neutral site. Auburn, same thing. Plus we don't know what the team looks like, right? Is Hugh Freeze off a job by then? Mississippi State, they could be checked out. LSU, same thing. Brian Kelly, unfortunately, maybe out of a job too. Texas, could they be uninterested? Missouri, same. Well, not really. Their schedule's a little more workable. So there is a very narrow path here from Tennessee to LSU, where you could see Arkansas win some of those games, right? Just depending on the mood of those teams, right? Auburn, for example, a big one. Tennessee, we just mentioned. LSU, where you don't know where those teams will be at based on how much they've had turnover or just a pressure situation, or whether or not their players are checked out or they're on quit mode because the players are mad and everyone's upset how the season's going and whatnot. So Arkansas, you definitely, from that stretch from October 11th to November 15th, they could take advantage of where those teams are, right? If you don't know where they'll be at. Because, again, like I said, Auburn could definitely have an interim coach. LSU, ditto, interim coach. Tennessee, it could be a mess offensively because of the new quarterback and having to reshuffle everything. Mississippi State, just a corpse. So, there's a chance here he can win some of those games. And, if Arkansas really start to get momentum, get Texas on the road, it's going to be tough. But you have Missouri coming to town on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So, there is a very narrow path here. Again, I get it. It's a very small window of opportunity, but it's not crazy. It's not. There's a chance, but it's a very low chance. And I guess they're a part of it. You have Taylor Green. You have Bobby Petrino back again as OC and quarterback. So, or vice versa, I think. So you have that. I think Taylor was actually good for them last year. I think he did have certainly a lot of bad moments, but he was also the reason why they were in. They were in a lot of games, but then again, they lost a ton of players in the transfer portal and an entire and a crucial mob of players just left. There's a whole, it's like 40 players left. Like, holy shit. That's not good. I mean, there's no sugarcoating, and that's pretty embarrassing. While I do like what they have at quarterback, I do also like their, your wide receiver, or not wide receiver, OC quarterback combo. It's just, the fact that you lost many players in the portal, your schedule, again, yes, we'll see what most of those teams look like by the time you play them. It's still a tough schedule. So it's in the warm category, but there is a path and there is sort of an avenue. While there might be one avenue is very narrow, it could certainly happen. Let's see, got one more. Yeah, one more here. It's another hot one, not a spicy one. Illinois wins the Big Ten. Now, I know, not necessarily from the program necessarily, but someone who I do watch, Tom Fornelli on Cover 3, big Illinois fan. I'm sure he might be watching this segment. Who knows? As I look up, I should have done this already, Illinois football team. They, of course, are one of the, not sleeper teams, but just a trendy pick, if you will, to win the Big Ten or at the very least get to Indianapolis. Their schedule, as we look at it, they should be, they could be 4-0 going to that game against USC. So could USC. USC could also be undefeated as well. Then they get their rivalry game against Purdue, and then it gets kind of real in a hurry with Ohio State, Washington, Rutgers, Maryland. At least teams besides Washington and Ohio State, teams which are either quality in terms of matching quality, or at least a little bit better than. Actually, now I'm looking at it, it does get actually a little bit more easier. Actually, you have Rutgers, Maryland late in the year. I don't know what those teams will look like. Wisconsin could be an interim, Northwestern, and they could be actually dead. So it's not like they could have a good season. Right? They could be 9-3, really good year. But is that enough to get the Big Ten championship game though? Because with Oregon, how good they could be this year, Ohio State, Penn State. That's why it's hot, because unfortunately they're in such a massive conference where I just don't know. Even with a 9-3 record, well, that might be the case in the old Division Big Ten, where Illinois would be the de facto sacrificial lamb to the slaughter, which would be the Eastern teams, whoever that would have been, Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State. I don't think it's going to happen as much as Tom Fornelli may disagree with that. But I will say this too, and Tom's brought this up on the show on Cover 3, I think at least once. Illinois historically has not done well with carryover from the previous season with expectations, right? Go to, I believe it was from, I think it's 2001 when they went to the Rose Bowl. The year after, they were horrible. Ditto with, I believe, the 07 season going to 08. Not really that good. So, yes, they have had a history of, previous year really, really good. Next year, high expectations, and they just crumble. That's also a reason why this is it's in the hot category. But there is an arrow path there, right? If they go 9-3 and things sort of fit their farther away and teams, start, accumulating other losses, it could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. But a 9-3 Big Ten team, depending on how, those losses look like, USC loss, a Ohio State, Washington loss, how does that look like? Is they already competitive games? Are they blowouts? I guess for the playoff wise, but for the Big Ten championship game, if that were to happen, which I guess that will be the best case scenario, I guess. Of course, we'll eventually have them in the record projection segment. But I'm going to go hot on this one. I just don't think it's going to happen. As much as I think a lot of you folks in Champaign or Chicago or wherever, Cairo, Illinois, a place I've unfortunately been to, you may disagree with me on that, but history says otherwise, I guess. And the schedule and the way the Big Ten's organized would disagree with me, or would agree with me, would disagree with you. I'm gonna get some water real quick, and we'll be right back. Make sure the voice is going well, because we have a lot more to talk about. I mean, heck, we've been talking for almost 30 minutes. So how about that? Team record projection: Georgia Bulldogs up next. So finally, it amazes me. You haven't done Georgia yet, and they were, the SEC champion last year. Even though everyone was picking against them, including me. But look, those valid reasons why. Not really much to recap here. Now I'm just going to double check here, make sure we haven't done Georgia yet in our team projection. I don't think we have. I have a list here on my computer, so I'm looking through this. Okay, I've done A&M, LSU, Penn State, Florida. We've done them. Making sure we haven't done Georgia yet. Okay, I don't think we have. Just double checking here, making sure we have not done it yet. Done them yet. Because I think last year we almost did that and had to change on the fly. I don't think we did. So we're just going to go straight into it. So, yeah, so Georgia, of course, last year, wins the SEC, makes it the playoff. They lose in the second in the on the neutrals after the first round, so in the second round to Notre Dame, who would go on to go to the national championship game. So somewhat of a hard way to end the season, sort of a tough pill to swallow the way the season ended. A lot of crazy games, the Ole Miss game, the Bama game, the Georgia Tech game. You won that game, but still no crazy. Of course, you beat Texas on the road. I believe was that Kirby's first win over a number one team. It's either his first or his second. It has to be, at least in the regular season. I think it is. It is his first. So how about that? Their schedule this year. I guess we can before we do that, I want to break down sort of my thoughts on the team. I guess sort of break down a little bit. Quarterback situation. Look, Gunnar Stockton, probably your starter. He came in last year against Notre Dame. He has sort of been, the heir apparent, if you will. Now, they also have Ryan Puglisi, who, speaking of Josh Pate earlier, Josh was pretty high on him last year, even a little bit more higher than Dylan Raiola. When Raiola, remember, he decommitted and went to Nebraska, and that's the reason now. Josh brought up Puglisi, and he had a lot of glowing reviews of him, right? So, and, we'll see where it's Stockton, Puglisi. I have a lot of faith in Mike Bobo, contrary to popular belief in the state of Georgia. I think depends on. It doesn't matter who really who's the starter, in my opinion. I think they'll be fine. That's not what I'm worried about. What I am worried about, though, is the running back situation. They do have Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens. They also have the transfer Josh McCray from Illinois. Speaking of Illinois, so there was a lot of mystery there, and they didn't really necessarily run the ball that well last year. Hopefully, they can kind of do a little bit better, because that's Georgia's identity on offense is run the football. Hopefully, that will that should be upgraded. Hopefully that's the case. Now, receiver-wise, I think it is interesting as they bring in the Zachariah Branch kid from USC, who was had that game against San Jose State a couple years ago, and everyone's like, oh man, this guy's gonna be the next big thing. And then last year sort of simmers down a little bit. And he goes to Georgia. I think a lot of folks didn't realize that. And up to including Bordeaux, who the college ball video game guy, he didn't realize that Zachariah Branch was at Georgia. Yeah, we've known that for half a year now. He's been there on campus. Well, supposedly, at least with the team. So he'll be a huge impact player for them. Out of the portal, Noah Thomas is still there. Oscar Delp, tight end. So you have a lot of mostly your same cast of receivers last year, although it really didn't. I guess it wasn't much to write home about. Talon Taylor, I believe, is the freshman wide receiver that Georgia got from the from last year's recruiting cycle. We'll see. I would imagine he could be a day one starter for them. I think so. There is that. Hopefully, one of those guys has to step up, right? I mean, last year's receiving core was just not. Look, Georgia's not like they've had a massive history of producing really good wide receivers for the most part. Like AJ Green and just like him, George Pickens, I guess. But they needed help there. O-line was a big concern for them still kind of is, replacing a lot of good starters, even though a lot of them were not necessarily good last year. A lot of those guys have to step up because that's to determine, right? Even regardless of like the running back concerns and the receiver situation, even with all that being said, the main core of that team is offensive line. I know it was a big concern from them. Hopefully it doesn't come to roost, but I think it might. It might be an issue. Defensively, though, while they do lose a lot of talent, they still have a lot of players coming in, like Christian Miller, Jordan Hall, Xavier McLeod, Elijah Griffin is a 5-star freshman, Isaiah Gibson, both of them part of that big recruiting class. KJ Bolton is back. He's been there for a couple years now, so there's a lot of talent on defense. Elijah Griffin is the freshman. I think a lot of folks are excited about. I mean, I think it goes to show you that defense for Georgia this year, while it's a lot of younger guys, not a lot of veteran players, it should probably be the strength of the team. I think that should be the case this year. So with their little breakdown done, I guess we'll go back to your schedule here. Go back to exit my notes. So let's go through the schedule. So they do not have, and I think I mentioned this before, which makes me wonder, did we do Georgia already? I don't think we did. I don't think we did. Let me just double check here because I know this is one thing of this list. It's like you have all these listed down, and then you wonder if you forgot one. Okay, I don't think we did. Did have one. So Georgia's schedule. So they get Marshall and their FCS team. So they have no big out-of-conference game besides Georgia Tech. So they don't have it this year. And then they get another G5 towards the end of the year, and then they get a game against Georgia Tech, neutral site supposedly in Atlanta. But their conference stretch, so their worst stretch, I believe, the one that's probably the one that's the most scary if you're a Georgia fan, is from Tennessee all the way down to the Florida game. And in between that, you have Bama at home. That's probably your biggest home game this year. Kentucky at home. Auburn on the road. We got a night game. Ole Miss. Florida and Jacksonville for at least the last year for a couple years, and they'll be like moving around the Southeast pretty much. Then you get Miss State, and then you get Texas, another big home game, and then your G5, then Georgia Tech. I will just say this, though, if you're like a Georgia fan or you're a Georgia ticket holder, this is the best year you've had in terms of the home games in like over a decade. I mean, you have Bama, Ole Miss, Texas, like bam, bam, over and over, just big, massive games, and that's good. If you're a Georgia ticket holder, that's what you've been hoping for, because that's one of the downsides being in the old SEC East. It's like, man, you have to deal with the only other home game we would get that'll be big is either like South Carolina in some years and like Tennessee occasionally and like Auburn maybe. But because no division down, you can play Bama more often. You can play, Texas and Oklahoma and things like that. And of course, it doesn't help that Florida's neutral site game, which I understand it for the historical purposes and that, helping Jacksonville, the city which I live in. I get it, but still, I really wish for the upcoming 2 years it would have been a home and away game. It would have been great to see that, but unfortunately, they will never let that happen. At least the conference won't. This is a tough schedule for Georgia, much like me, and it's similar to last year because it's like the same team, just the venues change. But still, like last year, it's a tough schedule, right? I mean, the Tennessee game, you could lose that one. You could lose to Bama again. You could lose to Ole Miss. You could lose to Texas. You could lose to Georgia Tech, even though it's a neutral site game. Auburn, it's on the road, right? Everyone remembers that game a couple years ago where you could have lost that game. That was a very tight competitive game. But based on the fact that, besides Bama, Texas, you do outmatch a lot of these teams in terms of talent-wise, right? You're more talented than a lot of these teams. But also, you are playing an SEC schedule, and a lot of those teams are always willing to have an opportunity to knock you off because you have been, for the past couple of years, the cream of the crop in the conference. So there is that. And plus, you also have a lot of teams that are looking for revenge, right? Teams that you beat, most notably Texas, Auburn. So it's a tough schedule. The FanDuel number is 9.5. When I look at this team of Georgia, again, you have all the new faces on offense. Defense, same thing, but you have some guys who've been there for a little bit. Quarterback situation. I still trust Kirby Smart. I still trust the people on the offensive side of the ball. Mike Bobo, again, contrary to popular belief. I think they're going to be okay, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that's going to look like with Gunnar Stockton or Ryan Puglisi, but what I do think is their best case scenario, based on everything we just said, right? Their best case scenario to me is actually 11-1. I think their toughest game, if you have to, decide which is their toughest game, their ultimately toughest game, I think it's that game against Bama. I think it is. I think it's because the rivalry and the mental stuff. That's their toughest game, at least with combining talent, the team they're playing against talent-wise, mentally. How are they mentally right for this game? Like they have been in the regular season over the past couple times they played them. That to me is your toughest game. And you have to get that game at home. It's at home finally. It's first time in over 10 years. It's an opportunity, right? You've only beaten Bama once in Kirby's career. And I think those Georgia fans, you're not going to have Kirby get fired or anything. That's never going to happen because how much equity is built up outside of a scandal. I think a lot of those Georgia fans, if you're ever in Sylvester, Georgia, or Ty, Georgia, Columbus, Tifton, Georgia, Ringgold, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're a Georgia fan in anywhere across the country, and that matter, you'd hope this team takes advantage of them being in your building because they are. Now I'm not saying that fan base is like other fan bases where they're very hawkish and they're the second things start happening, they start getting mad. I'm not saying that Georgia fans are necessarily going to like that to Kirby, but you're going to hear if they lose this game again in the regular season, you're going to have that conversation come up. May not like it necessarily if you're someone who's just a fan of college football, like me, someone who understands how the sport actually works, at least in terms of how coaches get fired and stuff. Of course, if they lose that game, it's going to be, Georgia, Kirby Smart, they can't do it. It's a mental thing. Well, I do agree that it is a problem. That's not a five-year-old offense, right? You're not going to get rid of Kirby Smart if they just lose that Bama game. But I do agree that is their toughest game, and that is a game to where just the psyche of the Georgia fans, at least the dissatisfaction, I guess that's even a word. I think for Georgia fans, they would really, really want that game. They did really want that game to be a win, right? They didn't want you to take advantage of the opportunity to have them come to Sanford Stadium at night under the lights on ABC. With Christian Kirk being there, and game day will probably be there as well, more than likely, or very likely. So because of that, I think of the talent, I think they're better than most of these teams on here, even to including Texas, I believe, because we'll be a home field advantage for Georgia. I think 11-1 is your best case scenario. So I guess in that case, you split the Texas-Bama games, whatever one you lose. If you're a Georgia fan, you probably much rather lose to Texas than lose to Bama again. Worst case scenario is 9-3, right? This is again a tough schedule. Again, think the Bama game, Texas game, Ole Miss potentially, Auburn potentially on the road, right? That's what I could come in. Georgia Tech too. So 9-3, worst case scenario. The most reasonable case scenario here, the most reasonable sort of route this season could go for them, I think similar to last year, 10-2. Again, it just what their schedule looks. And again, they may not I'm sure if you're a Big Ten fan or ACC fan, you go tough schedule. Georgia wasn't having these tough schedules 10 years ago, so deal with it, which is true, but still, and it is what it is. You have to call a spade. But look, this is they can look. There's so many ways you can look at this, right? They could easily, heading into that Kentucky game on October 4th, they could be 2-2, right? At Tennessee, and that game, you have a bye week in between the Bama and Tennessee game, but still, that Tennessee game, it's early in the year for Tennessee. It'll be, jacked up, ready for that game, right? There's a world where Georgia could potentially start 2-2 going to that Kentucky game at home. So, that is a real possibility, and as unlikely as that could be, more unlikely than the Texas starting 3-2. That's more likely. That's not a zero. That's not zero, but I don't think it's gonna happen. But boy, that does happen. And they're 2-2 going to that Kentucky game. Woo, man, that's gonna be. You want to talk about being hawkish around your football program? That fan base would be severely hawkish around that football program, around Kirby Smart. Hawkish in terms of being, mad and unhappy. That'll be very toxic if they're 2-2 going to a stretch of. Auburn, Ole Miss, Florida, staring you on the barrel, and plus you have Georgia Tech and Texas later in the year. So I think it's in their best interest if you're Georgia to go 10-2 or 11-1 and not, start off stumbling out in the gate. Again, the FanDuel number, by the way, and they're not a sponsor of the show either. They're just an asset we use. Is 9.5. So I do have them both in the best case and worst case scenario going above that. Even in the worst case, or the best case reasonable, I have them going over. Need some more water here, and then we'll move it right along. I think so far the voice is holding up, and we're having good progress too, so that's good. Fantastic Four trailer. So I had thoughts on this. Not too much to really write home about. Not a lot was revealed, which was kind of an issue because I wanted a little bit more story stuff. But I think, if you've been following the leaks and rumors and stuff like that, wherever it's watching YouTube videos, looking at Reddit posts, you kind of get the gist of the movies and what the movie will be like in terms of the plot. With Galactus trying to get baby Franklin Richards, and that's sort of the whole crux of the movie. And I think you do see it in the trailer a little bit with the general population sort of turning against the Fantastic Four. That's been rumored for a long time from very reliable people. I think the trailer overall, from a VFX standpoint, from a visual standpoint, looks amazing. I mean, the effects of Human Torch, the flames, everything look really cool. The visual stuff of Sue Storm and her powers, the stretchy powers for Reed Richards look great. The CGI for Ben Grimm, the Thing, look incredible. But the one part of the trailer that did bug me a little bit. I've sort of simmered down a little bit, and this is what I mentioned on Twitter yesterday. It was the whole it's clobbering time thing where it's like Johnny's trying to get Ben to say a line, and he's not saying it well on paper, and I've sort of warmed up to it to where I get it. Yes, it's a gag in the movie, and who knows? We could go when everyone sees it in a couple of weeks. It maybe won't bother me as much. But and this is something we've heard too. That was in the rumors, right? That throughout the movie, while Ben does not say the line, other characters do say it. That was being reported for a while ago, and now it's been confirmed, and it sucks, right? You want the characters to say the lines, or you want these characters, and that's one of the things of the other Fantastic Four films. It's like they were not truly embracing what made the Fantastic Four, right? Whether it's the older Fox films or that stupid Fantastic Four movie in 2015, it's just like they've never truly embraced those characters the way I think they would have, and I think it's a missed opportunity to not have Ben Grimm say it's clobbering time. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. It seems like they're totally going to bypass that. If the leaks are indeed true, which it seems like they definitely are now, is based on this trailer. So that bothered me a little bit. It was sort of annoying a little bit to a certain extent. But besides that, visually looks good. I do agree with Josh over at Den of Nerds. I think it does look visually better than Superman to a certain extent. And I think Superman, to a certain point, is fine. Visually, I get it. It's more of a different tone. But let's just be real here. I mean, visually, over it's the effects on Galactus. We didn't hear him speak or anything, which I get it. Maybe they are saving it for when you go to the theater and the whole place starts shaking when his voice starts talking, which I'm assuming that's why they're saving his voice reveal for the movie theater, which will be interesting, pretty cool. But I think for the most part, besides the clobbering time joke, it's sort of a little bit annoying in the fact that he's not going to say it in the movie. Besides all of that, it looks good. I'm very excited for this film. I know a lot of folks are still complaining about the female surfer. It's like, okay, you can have your opinions, and I get it. It's a little bit different. You're sort of deviating from what other source material have done, though she is a character in the comics. I can understand that. Visually, though, it looks great. The voice sounds pretty cool. It's like a metallic sort of echoes of the voice. So at that point, you have me. I'm fine with it. I'm on board with it. If it works in the movie, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So, the final trailer was good. Again, I just really wish that Ben Grimm does say clobbering time. I really do hope they do get that in the movie because Johnny does say flame on and all this stuff. So it's like, it would be a missed opportunity. Based on the leaks and rumors, he's not going to. So I'm preparing myself for it. A lot of folks have who were concerned about that when it was leaked out, but I guess it is what it is. Last little main topic here, and then we'll get into the Q&A stuff. Thomas Castellanos, quarterback from Florida State. He made some comments this a couple days ago. We didn't cover on the Tuesday show because there was a lot of things going on, especially with the video game. Made some comments, and I'm not going to read them off because I'm sure you've seen them by now. About sort of, in a sense, if you haven't listened to them yet, it's I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. The actual quotes. Now I'm not going to bother doing it, but essentially what it was just sort of him, cattle prodding Alabama, saying something to the lines of, "Oh, Nick Saban's not there to save you anymore. It's Kellen DeBoer now." Sort of like how fans talk, right? It's you're trash talking or trolling over fan base. Which, look, I don't, to a certain extent, I don't mind trolling, but I guess that's sort of my reaction to this. It's like, look, you can say whatever you want. It's a free country, right? You can say whatever you want. Look, Florida State go 2-10 last year, poking your chest out like this. Well, yes, I get it. It's to get morale and get the fan base excited and get the players excited. Sort of a different two stance versus what you had last year of DJ, more of a silent leader. It was more of an introvert. Castellanos is definitely more of an extrovert. I get all of that, more of a different sort of vibe right now. Mike Norvell, his future there is not necessarily set in stone yet. I get all of that, and to a certain extent, I do mind. I don't really mind trash talking or saying things like this. But much like a lot of other folks, back it up, right? Like I said before when we did the Florida State preview, when we were mentioning this game, the best case scenario for Bama or for Florida State in this game versus Bama should be, and Malzahn being their coordinator should remember this, the blueprint should be Auburn versus Clemson 2016, right? Clemson comes in, they're number one team in the country, number two. Auburn coming off of a somewhat disjointed mess of a year in 2015, and everyone's thinking, oh, Clemson and go on the journey here and blow them out, sort of like USC did in 2002 or 2003. That didn't happen, right? Auburn was very physical. They matched up with Clemson. They frustrated them. The crowd was in the game, and I think for Florida State, for a Florida State fan or a player or anyone on that staff, I guess, especially Malzahn, you should remember that game. He was coaching as the head coach, Robert. That's the best case scenario, right? You drag it out. It's a knife fight, pillow fight. It's really physical. Everyone, it's going to be hot too. So, the temperature could be on your side, especially in terms of, being used to that Florida heat. Though it's not much that different than it is in Alabama because I used to live there. So it's not much of an advantage, but I guess still kind of is. But again, like I said, I guess the best case is Florida State in this game against Bama. Again, we'll finish the preview of the game more properly. I'll give you guys my prediction and all that. The best case for Florida State, again, is just got to make it look like Auburn-Clemson 2016. Down to the wire, final play, make it worth it, right? If you do that, you don't have to win the game. You just got to make it really competitive and make it, somewhat frustratable for Bama. I'm totally cool with this. If they get blown out, let's say if it's like i.e. Clemson blowing them out in 2018 during the Willie Tiger years, then I have a problem with it. Then it's like, man, you really you said all that, and then you look like street pizza afterwards. And like even after that, I think folks will probably forget about it eventually. Or it could turn into a meme, right? It could be like that Vanderbilt player back, or ironically, that same year, I believe, or year before, when they beat Bill Snyder in Kansas State. Vanderbilt's like 3-0, and Bama's coming into town with Tua and Jalen Hurts. And then Vandy players saying, Bama, you're next or whatever. And then it's, the meme, right? 59-0. It's like it's in the words of Josh Pate, very much so would have been a Sarah McLachlan special if his show existed a little bit back then. I better hope that's not the case, right? You better hope you back it up and at least not win the game, but at least make it competitive and okay, and you get it, you somewhat backed it up. So yeah, for the most part, I have no problem with it. Trash talking is fine. Just back it up. It's off the stage. Back it up. Doesn't mean you have to win the game necessarily. Just, you gotta, at least show that you're willing to back it up and actually, make this a challenge for Alabama, week 1. So Q&A time here. Got a couple of things here to bring up. First one, thoughts on the Superman clip and the very first early reactions that have come out. Some of the ones that have leaked out. Most notably from Robert Meyer Burnett, who tweeted something. I know he's on the show he does with he does in the afternoon. Yeah, I think he will definitely mention it probably or bring it up. I guess I'll go and watch it later. But Robert on Twitter, actually before I get into, I guess we'll go over the clip that was on. What was it, Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, one of those late night shows. Clip gets released. It's with Superman and Lex Luthor. He busts into Lex's office, and I guess it's in the movie where I guess his dog Crypto has been taken by Lex, and he sort of confronts him. So I saw the clip. I didn't watch it yesterday. I was busy doing other things, and I was aware the clip was out there. I know there's some other clips that people have not been totally on board with. A little bit concerning. Some of them I did watch. Some of them I haven't watched yet. But This one, I saw this sort of circulating last night. A lot of folks were getting mad about it. I watched it this morning. It's okay. It's okay, I guess. Like, I don't know, man. I do agree because Josh over at Den of Nerds was on earlier. I think he's off now. He talked about it as well in sort of the early reactions. I think he did talk about Robert Meyer Burnett's discussion, if you will, tweet, if you will, about it, post. Like I said before, my fear of this movie, like, generally I don't have much of an issue of James Gunn. I do think it is kind of annoying. He is kind of a troll and whatnot. Sort of his spats of certain people and his sort of the way he carries himself. That stuff I can necessarily, I'm not really, like, I don't have a lot of, I don't really care for that type of stuff. Though generally I do think he's pretty funny. I think a lot of the films he's made, TV shows included, are fairly pretty good. But my fear of this movie, and speaking of films he's made, the fear of this movie, at least of me, and I've said this before, and I'll continue to hammer this home. My fear of Superman is that I really hope it's not like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I hate that movie. It's not very good. It's too jokey. It leans too much into comedy stuff. I'm not a fan of it, contrary to popular belief. I think like me and Christian Harloff are definitely agree with that. I think Christian back in the day, he didn't like it as much as other people did. I kind of agree with him. It's like, it's like it's too jokey, it's too, sitcom-ish. And that was my fear. This was going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy 2 level humor. It's too funny. We have people like Jeff Snyder reporting it's Guardians of the Galaxy Superman. I'm like, is it more Guardians 1 or is it Guardians 2? My hope is that it's more like Guardians 1, where it's like, it's funny, but still serious. There's a lot of, it's a little bit more dialed back. But I will say this, while the trailers have sort of did a good job of hiding it, you can see some of it seeping through. This clip did not do a good job of hiding it. I mean, you can definitely tell it's a James Gunn movie. Right? When Nicholas Hoult brings the coffee mug to his face, and it's like, I'm like, that's very James Gunn, very Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It's like, no. But then you also have this tweet, if you will, from Robert Meyer Burnett on X, posted this, and I'm not going to read the whole entire tweet. I don't think I have it with me right now, but in a sense, the summary of it is, it's a complete 180 from Man of Steel. Now, look, I was also not a fan of Man of Steel either, so that to me, I was like, okay, I can get behind that, right? I thought Man of Steel was like really, really too dark and too boring in my opinion. But after seeing this clip and hearing what Robert Meyer Burnett said on Twitter, I'm like, so he's saying it's very much so Guardians of the Galaxy Superman. It's probably Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That's my translation of it, which is not good. That does make me very concerned. And again, that clip last night, for the most part, besides the mug thing, was fine. Though I will say, I think Superman, at least the way David Corns is portraying it, it's like, man, that's kind of angry. Sort of like the interview. It's like, man, dude, like, you can tone it down a little bit. Don't have to get too angry like that. Like, and look, in general, I don't have much of a problem with it, but I will say one of the things I did like about, Henry Cavill's version of Superman is sort of in a sense like Christopher Reeve, where it's like, well, I haven't watched those movies in a long time. I think my dad showed me those movies when I was younger. But in a sense with Cavill, it's like at least he didn't always go full on angry. It was mostly somewhat, still in command. From what I saw yesterday on that clip, I'm like, man, that's not really in command. That's like the Superman, at least this version of Superman's like very, I don't know, just like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's in command, right? It's just very off the wall, angry, yelling. I don't know if I really like that, but we'll see how it plays in the film. But yeah, so I don't know, man. It's just I'm getting mixed messages here. It's either people are going to like it because of the comedy, and it's more of Guardians 2, which again, a lot of folks didn't like that film. I was in the minority with some other people. If the general public does like this though, and it makes them a lot of money, it's sort of like a Minecraft situation or a Lilo and Stitch. That's totally fine. I get that, but it's just, I don't know, man. I have my concerns about this film. I am very much so worried about it in terms of the tone. Look, we go see it, and look, if it is more like Guardians 1, we dodged a bullet. If it's more like Guardians 2, then all right, cool, it's fine. It's not what I was really hoping, but oh well, right? Again, look, film for the most part is subjective, right? And I think a lot of folks have different feels on it. I think me and Josh are Den of Nerds, and to a certain extent, in some ways, I guess Christian Harloff, we do fit in that same realm of, look, we like a lot of James's stuff. Guardians 2 for me was pretty bad. Look, I'll admit it. Look, when I admit it, say it again. Look, it was just bad. I did not like it. It's not my favorite movie of his. The catalog of stuff he has done with like Marvel and DC. Yeah, it's definitely the worst, right? The story plot was very thin, too jokey. I mean, some of the jokes were funny, but just like it was just like over and over, like bang your head. It's like, oh, man, well, rip my eyeballs out. Like, whew. But yeah, so not too much in the way of hopeful, I guess, based on these comments. The Robert Meyer Burnett tweet, though, it is interesting, though, that he is saying it's a 180 from Superman or from Man of Steel. I guess from some people, that's either a good thing or a bad thing, I guess. To me, it's more in the middle, I guess, but I don't know. We'll see when the movie comes out, but yeah, just some interesting stuff to bring up there. Next question here. Thoughts on the toughest places to play from EA Sports College Football 26? I was going to talk about this on Tuesday, but just because the show was going well over an hour, we didn't get to it. But yeah, so here's their rankings. Now, this is over on from X. This is from On3, but you can look this up if you want to. I'll just read off the list here, starting from 25 to 1. So the last team I mentioned is number 1. First team I mentioned is 25, so you can fill in the gap. So it goes from Mississippi State Stadium, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, Carter Finley Stadium, NC State, Notre Dame Stadium, Bryce Eccles, Kinnick Stadium, Huskies Stadium, Jordan Hare, Bryce Williams Rice Stadium, Camp Randall, the Doak, Texas Memorial Stadium, Neyland, Kyle Field, Michigan, Austin Stadium, Oklahoma Stadium, Ben Hill Griffin Memorial Stadium, not Dabo Sweeney. That'll be kind of weird if that stadium named after him. Brian Denny, Sanford, Ohio Stadium, Beaver Stadium, Tiger Stadium. So that's 25 through 1. I do have some disagreements on here. I do think a couple teams should be a little bit higher here. I think Carter Finley should be up there a little bit higher based on history, right? You know, for example, beating Clemson a couple years ago, and Florida State's struggled there before. It's a little bit more of a smaller stadium, so that means the noise is a little bit more centralized, if you will. NC State, a little bit low. I thought they would be a little more higher. Husky Stadium should be up there. I think from what I've heard, like people like Josh Payne, some other personalities who've been out to Washington games, Washington should be a lot higher on this list. They should, right? I think Washington deserves to be, at the very least, in the top 12, top 15, I guess. This is pretty low. Auburn at 17, I agree, right? Based on, I think, recent history, you make the argument they're a little bit lower now than they were last year. If you're using that same logic, why isn't Husky Stadium a little bit higher? So where's that? Same with Carter Finley Stadium, right? The ones down the bottom, like Spartan Stadium, could have done with, I don't know if they really belong there. Boone Pickens, now, this one's interesting. I've had a lot of mixed thoughts on this. I talked to a buddy last year around the 4th of July that from what I have heard, Oklahoma State's atmosphere, well, from what I had seen of it, I don't know if this is true because I haven't been there in person before, but this person I talked to last year did. My perception of Boone Pickens Stadium is like, it's very loud. You have the paddles, and it's a smaller stadium, right? You'd imagine it'd be a lot more louder because it's less, it's not a bigger stadium. It's a much more smaller facility. But from what I've heard from this person who has been to, he's an alumni of Oklahoma State, he's been to these games here, or he's been to games there, the atmosphere is not what you think it is, which is interesting. It's not like those atmospheres in the SEC, which makes sense, right? It's a different conference, but that's really interesting that the atmosphere is not what you think it is on TV. So, okay, so that's interesting. Mississippi State being there at 25, just based on the cowbell factor. I know they've not been good for over the years and over the past couple of years, and that may be why a lot of folks are questioning this one. But in terms of the cowbell factor, it's, it's definitely, especially in big games, I guess, go back to like 2014, Mississippi State, A&M, or Auburn versus Mississippi State. It can get really, really loud, right? It's a very loud place, and it's a very loud environment. They'll show up the cowbells. So that's understandable, but still, it's like in recent history, it doesn't make any sense to be on here. I do believe there are a couple of stadiums here missing here. How about Kansas State, right? Kansas State should be on here. Iowa State, want to go Big 12, they should be on there. Kansas State, much like Mississippi State, sort of an underrated place. Trying to think here. I don't know. Minnesota maybe could be number one. Louisville. Louisville could be on there as well, especially when they're really good. So there's definitely some schools that are missing on here. Ones that make sense not to be on here, like Miami, that's obvious. Trying to think here. Georgia Tech is another one. I can understand why it's not on there. Arkansas. Arkansas should. I could make an argument for them being on there, especially in big games, like the Texas game a couple years ago, the game against Tennessee. In big games, they usually do come out and support. It's a very loud environment, at least on the TV side. So, yeah, some things to disagree with. Like, Kinnick Stadium should be a little bit higher. Husky Stadium definitely should be at higher. Camp Randall, I think, unfortunately, based on recent history, maybe bump it down a little bit. Doak Campbell, I'm fine with. That's fine. Kyle Field at 11. They were number 1 last year, and then I think EA updated it before the season started. But yeah, Kyle Field went from number 1 last year, number 11. Okay, a bit of a steep drop. Most of the top 10, fine. Though we'll say I think Bama being the top 5, I do disagree with, mainly because it's not, from what I've heard and from what I've witnessed on TV, well, the teams necessarily have been good for Bama. And look, I'm not denying that, right, man? Greatest running of college sports history, including other sports too, not just in football. So yes, I get it. Talent they've had there is really good. Their teams have been very, very good. But in terms of the overall atmosphere, outside of like big games, like where Bama, I think Josh Baker has brought this up to where Bama feels threatened, especially go back to like 2019 LSU, 2011 LSU, 2010 Auburn, Georgia last year. For these big games, yes, it's a very electric atmosphere. But besides that, for like a random Iron Bowl game with Auburn, who may have like 6 or 5 losses already, it's like kind of yawn. Ditto with like a Mississippi State game. Ditto with an Arkansas game. It's like yawn. It's like that's just the vibe I get, right? Outside these big games, which I guess for some people it's like, well, duh, you're right. But it's like even with the non-big games, it's like the atmosphere is not the best. It's very sleepy. If the fans will leave early, the game's a blowout. From the Bama side of things, it's like top 10 for sure, but not top 5. That's a little bit higher in my opinion. The top 4, in my opinion, for the most part, I have no problem with. Right, LSU, fine. Even though people will make their argument, I've seen it already, where it's like, oh, look at these last Bama LSU games. Oh, 29-0. 41-16, 55-16. Grant you, yes, last year didn't necessarily help. A game almost 10 years ago doesn't help either, though that's a long time ago. But you're forgetting that COVID season was no fans. So it's like, yeah, it's part of it. Not to mention that LSU team was terrible. So what, you're going to forget the game in 2022 when Bama lost to them for the first time in Tiger Stadium in over 10 years? You're going to forget that. You're going to forget the 2013 game or 2012 game. You're going to forget the 2014 game. Both of those games are very, very close. So, well, I get it. A lot of folks will have issue with LSU being number 1 because of the Bama LSU game last year and the recent examples of that rivalry game. Still, though, it's them being number 1. Penn State's fine. Stanford Stadium, I think, should be over Ohio State, in my opinion, because, actually, I think scratch that. Georgia should be number 1. And I think the argument now, just realize this. You guys know that Georgia's not lost a home game this decade at all. They've lost games, but they have not lost. Now, again, part of it's because of the way the conference is organized. A couple years ago now, they have no divisions anymore. So it's like, yeah, Georgia, of course, right? Florida games at neutral site. Tennessee was not good back then yet. Josh Heupel wasn't there yet. You weren't playing like Bama a lot. You weren't playing that really good quality Auburn teams at home. So, yeah, I think Georgia should be number 1, honestly. I mean, they've not lost a game since Wilderness champion South Carolina, of all teams, came in there in 2019 and beat them. Ever since then, haven't lost. So, while I understand LSU being up there in terms of atmosphere, but still, I mean, like, Georgia hasn't lost a game in, like, half a decade. Like, that's pretty hard to do. So, now, of course, this year it's going to get a little more threatened, but we'll see. But, yeah, for the most part, have some qualms with this. Mostly I kind of agree with it, but yeah, there are some issues with it. And yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, Georgia should be number 1. Last question here, a little quickie. Can Luke Fickell survive at Wisconsin? It's going to be tough. Their schedule's tough, toughest in the conference. We don't know if they're going to do that quarterback. We'll see. I think the experiment with Phil Longo coming in last year just didn't work out. So, look, he's embattled. It's their program's in the fight, team's in the fight. I mean, their schedule's tough. Not to mention they play Bama too on the road, so it's So, yeah, it's looking unlikely he survives the year. Could definitely see a scenario where they're using an interim by the time they get to November. I have no real joy saying that, but is what it is, I guess. So, yeah, I don't see a path to where he can survive. And look, if they make a bowl game with this schedule, or like 6 wins, 7 wins, I think he stays around because you want to keep stability. But if it's like 5 wins, 4 wins, or even 3 wins, yeah, I can see a scenario where they just go, enough's enough. We gave you 3 years, you've done nothing, which is kind of surprising in my opinion. Because I thought it was going to work out. But yeah, I guess this is yet another example, sort of like Scott Frost, where not every single head coaching hire is a home run. Very rarely do you get those, and it sounds like that was not the case. It's, again, sort of turning into another Scott Frost type of hire. I'm not saying he's Scott Frost as a coach. I think he's more accomplished than Frost was as a coach, Fickle. But I don't know, just disappointing. I'll just say. Thought they would be a little bit better than they were. The roster's not good. I think part of it too is just the influx of teams coming into conference realignment. And another thing too to mention, one of Josh Pate's theories about why you've seen the Big Ten in particular get more serious about, or at least be more hawkish, if you will. Never second time we use that term, hawkish, if you will, with their lower tier programs in terms of their coaching hires. Like, for example, getting Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, getting Matt Rule from the NFL and come back to college, right? So they've been, Big Ten in general, the office has been more hawkish because of their TV contracts, right? And I think those TV presidents at those networks, or if it's NBC, CBS, or Fox, would, want their inventory to be really, really good, right? And they don't necessarily want to have like a 2-10 Wisconsin team or a 2-9 Wisconsin team playing in the last weekend of the year on their network. I don't think they accept that. So, yeah, I think Josh Pate's theory here still exists, right? I think those network executives are still, and Big Ten folks are still hawkish about this, and I think they want their big brands like Wisconsin and like a Michigan State and like a, Nebraska to be good again. If they're not good, they're going to put a lot of pressure on those athletic departments, regardless if it's, fair or not fair, to make changes, right? They want to have good inventory. That's the only reason why they've made all these deals, to have inventory for their streaming services and for games during the week and make more money. So, unfortunately, because of that hawkishness of the Big Ten execs and TV execs, their TV partners, there will be change at Wisconsin this year if it goes off the rails, in my opinion. That's, again, I know it sucks. It's not necessarily fair to look Fickle, because it does sound like they are trying to make some changes. But I don't think there's enough time to do it, unfortunately. It's going to take someone else's time to do it. Unfortunately, not his. And that's it for the show, right? Going over a little bit over an hour. We'll be back live on Tuesday. Next Thursday, no live show. We'll have pre-recorded show. So until next Monday, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And, we'll see you on the next stream.